Thank you, Ellen. Welcome everyone to our Planning and Heritage Committee meeting for Wednesday, August 31st. Call the meeting to order. Declaration of conflicts. I see none. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. I need a mover. Moved by Councillor Yankoff, seconded by Mayor Brown. Thank you. All those in favor? Good. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes for Wednesday, May 11th, 2022.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I thought I might have brought it up. It was, I asked Mr. Forbes about best practices when it comes to boarding houses in the city, and I thought that was at the May meeting, but it's not reflected here in the minutes. I just want to put that back on Mr. I know he's busy, but Mr. Forbes' plate of things to do, so if we could just ask Alex to look at it. Alex, is that all right?
Yeah, sure, but that's a massive undertaking, and again, we have some other priorities, including the official plan, which we may be able to work that in to deal with that issue. But the issue with boarding houses are very critically linked to affordability, and so there's opposing camps on that. But we will certainly put that on our list and start to work on that to see what accommodations we may, or what the appropriate provisions in the bylaw need to be placed to make that work for everybody's interests.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, all I'm
Yep.
asking for from Mr. Forbes and the department is just to look out within our own region.
Yeah.
If there's anything out there, any templates that we can use. Thank you, sir.
Good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Alex. Yes, Councillor.
Happy off if this was done in our last meeting of the committee in closed session, because I don't see it in the minutes. I know we had a discussion, a legal matter, to have a letter sent out to a developer. And that was at our last meeting, like 4 months ago, Julie, was it?
Yeah, so
So is that closed or open?
I believe that was closed. So, yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you, though. Okay, so adoption of the minutes, business arising from those minutes, or sorry, I should move it, sorry. Moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Councillor McCabe. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. And business arising from those minutes, so we had a little brief discussion there. Any other business from the minutes? See none, okay. 6, we'll go into discussion. 6A is the consideration of amendments to section 5.2.2 of the zoning and development bylaw dealing with shipping containers. Do you want me to start with that, or you want to take it? You, or, yeah, so I guess maybe I'll start. There was a shipping container in my ward that the residents were concerned of, and I brought it to Alex's attention. And according to our rules, shipping containers are not to be permitted. But like everything else, it's a hard thing to police, but the bylaws are there. But after seeing just how many there is, it was brought up by the owner that then if you're going to, there needs to be some type of. So if you would like to take over from there, Alex, and explain a little further on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you mentioned, we've been dealing with one of these recently. There's a picture of what one of these looks like. So we're dealing with this particular situation, and this one has been modified. This is for storage, but the reality is that there's a number of these around the city, and they're just being used as storage. It's obvious that they should not be allowed in a residential area or certain other areas that where any kind of an aesthetic consideration should be applied. But the reason it's here is that if the committee wants, they can direct staff to review this in regard to, is there an appropriate place in the city for these type of containers? They're fairly inexpensive to purchase. They are fairly effective way to provide storage that's dry in a location, but again, depending on where they are, they're not very aesthetically appealing. So if the committee so desires, we will review that section of the bylaw dealing with these type of containers and then indicate whether we feel that the zoning bylaw should be amended to allow them in some zones or no zones, or, but just have another look at it. To your point and to the complainant's point, there's a number of these around the city, and they're contesting that whatever way we deal with them, it should be, they all should be dealt with equitably, which is correct. And so we will look into that section as to the original intent, what it was trying to achieve, whether it's meeting its current intent, and if not, proposed amendments that we could bring forward, and that you would have to go to a public meeting. But this committee is just really whether you feel that this is an issue that needs staff attention, and if you do, you can direct staff to direct us to take a review.
So further to explain, I guess the residents complained, as you see in the background there's snow piling going on. So that is actually the borderline there of the Confederation Trail. So, you know, it's like the bylaw. You're not allowed to push snow out onto the street. You can't push snow up onto the trail. So when it comes to what we do with this, we have to, you know, this probably was where the customer put his snow before, and now the container's there, so now where does he push the snow? You know, you can't push it out in the street going forward from the doors, and you can't push it from behind. So these are issues that staff will have to look at. And as it turns out, it's all residential up the street, except for this lot. This lot is not residential. So that's the argument that the owner has as well, is that this would permit, you know, so that it's kind of, it's always, like we all know, there's little curves, balls to all these things, but, you know, to be, in some ways, you know, the neighbor, or the owner has taken care of this property quite well. It was derelict before, he's done a great job, and I think we can work with him, you know, but, he was under the impression that it wasn't there before the snow, but that picture clearly shows that the snow was there. So, you know, that's an issue we will have to contend with as we move forward with whatever staff's recommendations will be. Councillor Yankoff, you have a question.
So if we were just to apply a common sense approach to this, so this CCAN or storage unit, whatever you want to call it, was just placed here on its own. There was no permit application. Whereas if he was to have built a storage small unit this size, they would have gotten a permit? So does common sense just tell us that anything like this should just have to be applied for, like with a permit? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, there as staff looked into it, there was no permit request. So that's the first problem. But the problem is, you know, these containers are all over the city, and if it's only now that you'll take notice how many there really is. There's a lot, and it's just something you really kind of have a blind eye to. But you know, so if you do deal with this, we got to deal with them all, and unfortunately, so. You know, yes, there should be a permit process, and the bylaw has to be amended to make them work. So, and we'll leave that up to staff to come back with a recommendation. Anything else, Alex?
Just to follow up, the issue here is that he clearly does need a permit, but there's no use applying for a permit because he cannot get that structure approved. So he's contesting the structure. You know, he would like the ability to retain that structure. We'll have to see, you know, what zone it's in, whether the bylaw has to apply to everybody. So the fact is that are there places where these are acceptable? We can look around to see where the majority of them are. If they're in an industrial area, they're likely not a problem. But this is somewhat sensitive. As the councillor pointed out, it's on the periphery of a residential area, but it's not zoned residential. It's zoned that you could have a building of this type, but it's the type of building. So we're just looking for some direction. If you want us to look at it, we'll look at it. That doesn't mean that we're going to request any changes, but we'll have a closer look at it in regard to why it was in the bylaw, whether it could be improved in the bylaw, and if so, we'll bring it back to planning board and council. If you so desire, you can have a public meeting on it.
Good, okay. So any other comments, concerns? Are we comfortable with letting staff take a serious look at this one? Because, I mean, there has been, like, you know, someone as big as Canadian Tire we're asking, right, for example, in the past here, but, yeah, there is a lot out there. So,
Yeah.
you know, we are to deal with one, we have to deal with them all, so it's probably something we should be dealing with.
Do we have
And-
a timeline?
That's a tough one for Alex.
We will, you know, it's on our list, but, you know, because of, there is some enforcement on this, you know, there's a gentleman that we've indicated that we will not enforce this till we get, you know, get some clarity on it. So we would like to get it done sooner than later because, you know, when enforcement is impending, we have to move on it or indicate that it's under review.
So we're good with, we don't need a motion for this, or do we?
You can just direct staff.
Just direct staff?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so, yes, you sure can. Yeah.
And also the manager. Mr. Forbes, we've been asking for now 2 years about developing a summary offense ticketing system. If we had that in place, all we'd have to do was send down our bylaw enforcement officers and produce a ticket with a minimum maximum penalty. So that has to be in place, especially for the STR regulations that are in grace period right now until March 31st, 2023. So can we work on that quicker than slowing down or waiting for it to catch up to us? Mr. Chair?
Your worship, or to the chair, through to the worship, his worship. Yeah, you know, that's down at Cox and Palmer, and again, that's all legal work, and they're clearly tasked with providing that framework. And you know, there's additional parts of the STR bylaw. There was actually a piece came in on that today for my review, not that, but the section that you're dealing with. So they are clearly working towards getting that in front of council to get that resolved, hopefully before this council's term is finished.
And Mr. Chair, I know it may require a schedule, an amendment to the schedule in the Planning Act, which is a provincial act. So could we please find out if it requires any amendments to the act? Because if it requires an amendment to the act, then it has to be done in the Legislative Assembly. Again, hopefully we'll have the T's crossed, the I's dotted, so we can get this in place, not just for STR regulations, but everything we're doing. Like someone builds an accessory building. We've had that come in front of us, right, Mr. Chair? Can't do anything unless we go to court. Like, going to court is just too expensive. You give a ticket, someone doesn't like the ticket or is not going to pay the ticket, then it's up to him or her to take us to court. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we'll be looking forward to some information come forward on that at a later date. So move on. So you have your direction, Alex, on that one? So
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Motion to move into closed session as per section 119.1.
Also, Ellen is.
And she'll need time to,
Are we required to have a motion for this?
no, we're just giving direction, just direction.
Right, yep.
Yeah, so, so a motion to move into the closed session as per section 119.1, subsection 1, or F, sorry, of the legal anticipated proceedings or advice of the Municipal Government Act of PEI, and moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Councilor Yankoff. And all those in favor going to closed? That's everyone, thank you, and we'll give Ellen a